Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at Champions of Midgard from Grey Fox Games. This is a worker placement game, but as you can tell from the box cover, it is not like the frowny Euro dude worker placement games you may be used to. This is a Viking-themed game. You take control of a clan of Vikings, or specifically a champion Viking with some other lesser Viking warriors under your control, who is trying to protect the homeland of Midgard. There are trolls, there are these undead Draugr creatures, and there are sea serpents who are attacking your ships, and you need to defend all of your people from them, and by doing so you will gain glory, as most Vikings will. And if you're not able to defend against the trolls in particular, I guess they really hate trolls, you might actually be disgraced in the eyes of your people. There's a lot of interesting things going on in this game. Let me go ahead and give you a probably actually not that brief look at how the game is played, because I wanted to cover everything. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of Champions of Midgard. This is a competitive worker placement game for 2 to 4 players. You each take control of a tribe of Viking warriors, and you are trying to defend the homeland as best you can. Defend Midgard. And you're going to do this over the course of 8 rounds. Everything that you do in the game, or, well, not everything, but the major things you do in the game, like fighting trolls, or fighting the Draugr, or fighting out the different monsters out at sea, all of these different things have the potential to give you glory points, and that's how you win the game. Whoever has the most glory points at the end of 8 rounds of play is going to be the winner of the game. Now, I have this set up for a 4-player game, and as you can see, the game board is very large, so I can't quite fit everything on camera at this point. Now, each player at the start of the game is going to choose a set of colored meeples and little scoring discs. You will also take a piece of wood, which are the brown cubes, food, which are the red cubes, a warrior, which are the white dice. The other types of dice which you will not start off with are the axeman and the spearman, which are black and red, respectively, but for now you just get a swordsman. You also get a favor token, which is going to let you re-roll some dice, and you are going to get a coin. Now, each player, once everyone has chosen their specific color and you finish with the rest of the setup, is also going to draft from these different tribe tiles. So this is going to, or champions, I should say. These are going to tell you like what champion you represent and what your special power is, and they're all a little bit different. So Asmunder here says that you gain 2 glory whenever you spend a favor token to reroll, or Gilfor says that you do not pay when taking goods from the longship. The merchant ship. Svanhildur says that hit results on swordsmen do 1 additional damage in hunting or in combat. Dagrun the Destined says you draw an additional destiny card when visiting the sage's hut and then choose one of the 2 to keep. And Ulrur the Berserker says that you gain a glory each time you roll 1 or more 2 hit results in a round of battle. Does not apply to hunting. So each player is going to get one of these play mats representing their champion, and then the game is going to begin. Now, some other notable things out on the board. There's all these different worker placement spots. If you're not familiar with worker placements, essentially during the course of the game, when it's your turn, you're going to take one of your available meeples from your stock and put it out onto a particular area of the board, and then you will gain the ability of that spot. And for most of the spots, they can only hold 1 worker. So it's first come, first served until the next round begins. So for instance, if I went on the Varyogs here, and by the way, these are actually randomized tiles. Depending on the number of players, you're going to take different tiles, military tiles and economic tiles. So if you went to the Varyogs, you can spend a coin and get a swordsman and a spearman, which literally means you are taking the 2 types of dice, if they are available, and putting them into your stock. Although do bear in mind that each player has a limited amount of spaces for Vikings and for different supplies. Or I'm sorry, just Viking warriors. That's the only thing you have to worry about limitations on. But other areas of the board are going to give you different things. So for instance, if you go to the Skald, that's with your worker, you're going to get 2 glory points. The Wealthy Stranger, which just sounds weird actually, it's going to give you 2 coins. Now over here, you have these areas on the board which are actually going to fill up with resources every turn until they are taken. So you have the Hafter, which gives you a spearman, the swordsmith that gives you a swordsman, the blacksmith that gives you an axeman, and the smokehouse, which will give you any of the food that's there. Now, if someone goes there at the beginning of the game, they're just going to get one thing. But if no one goes there, those dice and food are going to stack up from round to round until someone finally takes all of it. At the beginning of the game, you only have 4 workers available, but if you go to the worker hut, then you may be able to get an additional worker, and this is going to depend on how many people have already claimed their workers. So, for instance, if I was the first one to go here and get my worker, I'd have to pay 5 coins, but the next person only has to pay 4. Remember, only one person can occupy the spot each round. So, the reason for the cost going down is because it gets less useful as the game goes on. Getting your 5th worker when you're already at like round 5 or 6 of the game is not nearly as useful as getting it very early in the game because you have less turns to make use of it. You could alternatively go to the runesmith. Now, the runesmith, when you go there, you can have to spend a wood in order to activate the space, but you get to choose from either 2 of the face-up rune cards, or you can take a random one off the top of the deck. These are going to give you special one-time use special abilities, but regardless of whether or not you use the ability or not when you put it face up in front of you, if you use it, you put it face down, but either way, you still gain its glory bonus at the end of the game. But for instance, Wealth says you double your current coins to a maximum of 5, whereas True Vision says you draw 2 additional Destiny cards when resolving the Sage's Hut, and still just keep 1. Speaking of the Sage's Hut, that's the next one that we'll talk about. Each player is actually going to start off with one of these Destiny cards that you can gain from the Sage's Hut. But when you go there for the first time, when you go there anytime, the first thing that you do is actually look at one of the face-down journey cards. The journey cards that are on the board are for when you are potentially going out to fight monsters on your ships. These represent hidden dangers that you may come across on your journey, and they're always face down. So, for instance, this one says that you lose one of your warriors, the Whirlpool. Or this one says all is quiet, so it's good to know that. Whereas this one says you lose 1 food or a warrior. So, and then you put the card face down after you look at it. So this will give you some insight as to which trip may be dangerous and which one might not be. After you get done looking at that journey card, then you get to draw one of the Destiny cards. And the Destiny cards are going to affect scoring at the end of the game. So, for instance, Slayer of the Undead has a condition that have the most Draugr cards at the end of the game, which are a type of beast you're going to be killing. And then you're going to gain a number of points, depending on whether you're the sole winner or not. So if you're the only person who has a clear majority of Draugr cards at the end of the game, you get 7 points. But if you're tied with 1 or more people, you're only going to get 3 points. Now, every round there's also going to be a random merchant ship that can help you. So if you go here, you can pay a coin and get 2 of the axemen, for instance. Or, this is another example, you can pay a coin to get an axeman and a spearman, and so on and so forth. Then you have the shipwright and the different ships that are here. Now, these are different spots. So if you go to the shipwright, you pay a number of coins and a number of wood equal to the cost and take an appropriate private ship. So you're going to be able to take these ships for yourself, and these are going to be extra ships that you can use in the future. Here's the cost down at the bottom. And those are also glory points that they'll be worth at the end of the game. So that's some incentive to follow that path. Now, each of these ships has a capacity on them, which is not only how many warriors it can hold, but how many food and wood it can hold as well. But if you don't want to bother with that, if you just want to go out to sea, then you can use the public longship or the small public longship, which are just different worker placement spaces that you can take. The small one has a capacity of 5. The big one has a capacity of 10, but you have to spend a coin in order to take it out on the water. The reason you'd want to take a ship out to water is to fight the monsters at the bottom of the board. In fact, these are not the only enemies you have to fight during the course of the game, but these are amongst the most deadly. Now, every enemy has the same basic stats. They have attack, which is how much damage they're going to deal to you, and defense, which is how much damage you need to deal to it in order to kill it in a single round. Combat continues until either the enemy is dead or you run out of warriors to use. If you can successfully kill the enemy, you're going to get that much glory, and in this case, you're going to get a favor token. But other cards, especially the Draugr cards and the Troll cards, might be getting you gold instead. And notice that some of the monsters actually cancel out dice. So if you go to fight this Lindworm, it's going to kill one of your axemen right off the bat before you choose to fight it. Other cards might say swordsman specifically or spearman specifically. So if you choose to put your workers on a ship, you will eventually get to that. Conversely, if you go to the troll spot up at the top, you are committing to fight the troll. You don't put the workers, your warriors out right away. You just put your worker there, signifying that you will be trying to fight it. You notice that it has the same kind of stats. This troll actually gives you 3 glory points, and you can gain wood if you kill it. Now, what is all that stuff in the middle there, and what does that mean? Well, that has to do with blame tokens. There are blame tokens that you may be forced to take if you fail to kill a troll. And in fact, if you succeed in killing a troll, you can get rid of your blame tokens and force another player to take one. This represents the townsfolk being upset that either you or someone else did not contribute towards fighting the trolls and helping to keep the rest of the town safe. At the end of the game, depending on how many blame tokens you have, you are going to lose an amount of points. So you definitely do not want to gain those, or gain as few as humanly possible. If you choose to fight the Draugr instead, there's always 2 available to choose from. They're usually a bit weaker than the other monsters and not as much of a penalty if you fail. But there is some interesting scoring here as far as the different colors of the cards. That also has to do with the monsters at the bottom of the board as well. After everyone keeps going around in a circle and gets done doing their worker placement, then everyone is going to commit their Viking warriors to the cause. So if I put a worker on the Draugr space, then I may choose to go ahead and commit this many dice to the card. I'm not rolling them yet, I'm only committing them to the battle. And I might go for that one, or I might say this one I'll go for. It's a little bit easier and I need a blue card instead. Now, it's basically the same thing down here with the monsters. However, remember that you are taking a ship out to water. So let's say that the green player is going to go ahead and do that. And when they do that, they're also committing their warriors, however many they can fit. The capacity for this longship is only 5. And since you have to count food as well, let's say that hopefully he has 2 spearmen, at least, since they're a bit more powerful. And they happen to have 2 food, so they'll go ahead and do that. And they will hope that they're not going to lose any food. In other words, not be able to feed their Vikings. Once everyone has got done locking in their dice, not rolling them, not doing anything yet, then it's time for combat resolution. And actually, the first part of combat resolution has nothing to do with those cards. It has to do with the hunting grounds. The hunting grounds is another type of spot that you could have put dice. This is kind of where you go if you don't have anything else you can do this turn and you want to stock up for the next round. You can put a worker there, and then any remaining dice that you have left over in your stock that's not committed to battles, you can roll it and hope to get more food. However many hits the sword symbols that you roll, swords or spears or axes that you roll on the dice, that's how much food you're going to get, to a maximum of 6 that you put into your stock. And notice how there are multiple spaces there, so that means as many people can place there during the round as they want. Then you proceed to doing the different fights, starting with the troll, then going with the Draugrs, then going down to the monsters. Combat in this game is, all about the dice rolling. You already know what the opponent's attack and defense is, so now you just roll however many dice you committed. So if I had previously committed 1 each of the 3 dice, I'm going to go ahead and roll those and hope to get hits, or at least shields to protect me from my opponent's hits. Now, if I don't like my roll, I could always use my favor token in order to re-roll some of the dice, and I can use multiple favor tokens if I want. And I do not have to roll all of the dice. So I can just say, well, this came up as nothing. I really want to win this. I'll go ahead and roll again. All right, so that's another damage. I was really hoping to get a shield, which honestly I don't even remember. That's actually not even on those black dice. So that would have been a foolish thing to do, because I'm already going to kill this guy, but I didn't want to lose one of my dice. So damage is simultaneous. The troll deals 1 damage to me. I have to lose 1 of my dice, so I'll just lose a warrior. And the troll gets 2 damage, or 3 damage total, which is more than enough to kill it. And again, if I was not able to defeat this thing, then I'd have to gain a blame token. But if I was, I could give one of my existing blame tokens to someone else. The fight with the Draugr will be done in the same way. It's very important to keep these cards down in front of you. Aside from the glory they give you right away, you also have to keep track of the colors of the cards, because you'll get set bonuses at the end of the game. Now down here with the monster fights, the premise is essentially the same, but remember that you have to flip over the journey card and see what happens to you. So this one actually happens to say all quiet, so I'm good to go. Now, actually, even though everything is quiet, I still need to feed my Vikings. So on these two closest spaces to the left of the board, they're not as far out, so I only need one food per Viking, which I happen to have. If I was further out to sea, I would require even more food in order to do that. Or actually, I'm sorry, I flipped it around. Further out here to the right of the board, you only need one food for every 2 Vikings. You actually need more food here. It's 1 food for each Viking. So yes, because I decided to go there, I needed 2 food, 1 for each Viking. Any Vikings that I can't feed die of starvation and go back to the stock. Even if you took more food with you than you actually needed, perhaps because you were fearful that it would be a card that would make you lose food, then you still need to spend all the food on this trip. After that, it's just a matter of rolling dice. Now, I didn't really go into this before, but different dice have different dispensations of weapons, and there's 2 damages and 1 damages. There's blanks, but there's also shields. Shields can be used to cancel out the damage from an attack from your opponent, which can save you warrior dice. But if you happen to fail, so let's say in this case I'm fighting this thing, which has 2 combat damage, and it deals 3, or it can take 3 damage. 1 shield cancels out 1 of its damage, and I deal 1 to it. And there are some temporary damage markers here to keep track of that. Now I have to take 1 damage because my shield only cancels out 1 hit, so I'm going to choose to get rid of one of these dice. And now I have to roll again and hope that, well, I'm going to die. Unless I roll a 2 and die in glorious battle, which I did not, so... but if I had rolled 2 spears, they would kill each other. That would be my only hope at that point. And again, when I kill it, I take the glory, I get the reward for it, and I'm able to take that card and put it in front of me face down as potential set collection at the end of the game. Speaking of that, I think you have a general gist of the game. We're going to go through 8 rounds of this, trying to get as many points for killing all these different types of monsters and draugrs and trolls and such on. When you get to the end of the 8th round, you count up your points. It's wherever you are on the glory track, plus whatever your destiny cards say if you meet their condition. Every set of enemies, and trolls do not have a color, but all of the lindworms and the draugr do have sets, and for every complete set of the 3 different colors that you have, you gain 5 glory. You also gain points for any of your rune cards, whether they are used or unused. Any of the private longships that you buy are going to give you points. If you have any unspent favor tokens, each one's worth 2 glory, and you get a glory for every 3 coins you have left as well. Because I guess some Vikings actually do care about wealth. That is a probably not too brief look at Champions of Midgard. Let's get to my final thoughts. Well, one of the big standouts for me about Champions of Midgard, I always start off talking about theme in my final thoughts, and that is a very big selling point of Champions of Midgard, is that there are a lot of worker placement games out there right now. I like worker placement as a mechanism, and there are a lot of worker placement games that are pretty themeless, which is usually a deal breaker for me, but I still like them because they have solid, great mechanisms. Champions of Midgard is able to have good mechanisms, so spoiler alert, I like this game, before I won't drag it out that much longer, but on top of those good mechanisms, there is theme. It's here. It makes sense. You have these dice, which is another cool element. You don't see many worker placement games with dice, at least to this substantial an amount of how much they're integrated into gameplay. But these dice are your warriors, and they have different combat capabilities. And you just send them out on longboats to fight monsters, and then you send them off to fight trolls, and if you fail against the trolls, again, I don't know why it's just the trolls, but thematically, but if you fail against the trolls, you get blames, and you can pass that blame around when you then go and fight trolls successfully in the future, and then you're fighting the undead, and you have to go to the hunting grounds to get food. All of these different elements, worker placement spots on the board, have great thematic elements to it, and that is a huge part of this game that I enjoy, and I love that they did that. On top of which, or hand in hand with that, I should say, the game looks great. The board looks very attractive. It looks very welcoming, while at the same time it's just very well crafted. The artwork on the character tiles, your player boards look really good. All the tokens, the artwork on all the monster cards, it's just a very attractive game, and that goes, looks matter. in games, and it does go a lot towards helping you get to that theme and to really appreciate that theme. So I liked what they did with the presentation a lot. And then moving on to the gameplay, a big hallmark of any worker placement game is feeling that restriction, feeling that you only have so many spots, and if you go there, if someone else beats you to it, you're stuck. You can't do that action for the turn. And that is certainly present in Champions of Midgard. However, I feel like there's so many things that you can do in this game that it's like, well, okay, I can't get those axemen like I wanted this turn. Let me go get some food, because I always need food, and food's going to be great, and I'll have a fantastic next turn. Or let me go and focus on killing monsters this turn. Or let me get some money, or get some reroll tokens. All of these different things are very useful at different times, and I never felt in the game like I was throwing away an action. I never felt like I was, I'll get some money, and I guess that'll be worth points at the end. No, I felt like I'm getting money, I'm going to use that to buy a boat next turn and get a buku amount of points, and perhaps it's long-term planning to be able to fight monsters better. So there's a lot of different aspects of that in this game where I always felt like I could do something. And the player powers really help give you focus and help with that as well. So it's like, well, okay, I don't get to do these other things I need to do, but hey, my character gets bonuses for going to the Destiny pile. She can really have better options as to what Destiny cards she gets, which could help me get points in a better way than, so at least it's something that I can do. So I really appreciated that aspect of the game. If I was going to say there was a complaint about the game, and this is going to be either minor or major depending on how you're coming to this game. If you're coming to this game as a diehard Eurogamer, I can imagine this would be a much bigger deal to you. And that's simply that the game is very random when it comes to combat. You can deploy a lot of warriors of different types, or all axemen, or all spearmen, and have that nice balance between shields and the spears and the combat hits. You can do anything you want. You can just load up your ship and go off to combat and still just roll terribly. It happens. It just happens. But it's a risk-reward system because you have bigger rewards, more glory, more victory points going after those sea serpents, which are much harder to get through. Not only are they tougher, but you might have to deal with these fortune cards, which will really screw you over. Like losing a food and then therefore losing another warrior before you even start the battle, and then you lose another warrior or can't take your spearmen into battle against a sea monster. It's very, very difficult, and then you just roll badly, and that's that. But in exchange for that, if you are successful, you get a lot of points. So you might say, well, I'm not going to worry about that. That's too much stress. I'm going to go for the Draugr cards, which are much easier to take, and I can still do the set collection thing and get more glory that way with the different colors. That's the only unthematic bit about the game, by the way. Ooh, the blue zombies. I'll kill those. I need one of those for my set. Okay, they had to throw something like that in there, I'm sure. But yeah, the randomness is a killer in this game. And I think that if you're unprepared for that, if you're going into this like this is methodical worker placement, I go here, I do this, I take this, blah 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 blah. If you're unprepared for the randomness of the dice rolls, which you cannot ignore in this game, I think, because I haven't played it a million times, but I'm pretty sure you have to take some risks during the game. If you're not prepared for that, it's just going to be brutal for you. I think that is the biggest downside of the game, but for me, it was something I was able to work through eventually because, again, I realized that there's other things I could be doing during the course of the game that would help me out. I don't need to take those risks every single turn, and if I fail, I'll go and do something else. Although I think too many turns like that where you fail on the risks that you take is pretty crippling in the game. Some of the scores I've had playing this game there's a big disparity between them, but I think with players who are experienced with it, that disparity shrinks quite a bit with people who know what the risk-reward system is. Boy, I mean, I could go on, but this is a solid game. I like the aspect of the runes, the destiny cards. There's all these little aspects of the game that you would think like, oh, do they really need to add that? Well, sure, because the game is simple enough that you can add these little things, and it doesn't add too much complexity. Very fast to teach, very fast to play, really, for this type of game. Full 4-player game, even with new players, you're looking at like 90 minutes. With less, definitely much shorter than that, which is a great thing for this style of game. People are going to inevitably compare this to Lords of Waterdeep.
thematically, it's no question this one is better as far as theme. I love Dungeons & Dragons, but I never felt like I was rounding up warriors to go and fight beholders and things in that game. The expansion to Lords of Waterdeep helped a bit, and I think that because of that expansion, these two games can coexist for the moment. Lords of Waterdeep has a little more depth to it, a little more bite, and it's something I'm more likely to play with the hardcore Eurogamers in my group. But I'm telling you, I'm not even sure about that, but I definitely, with one expansion of this game, bye-bye Lords of Waterdeep is how I would feel, because this is just solid. And I don't even like Vikings that much. I'll go ahead and say that right now. But they had a really great idea here, really great game, and I was very, very surprised by it. Check it out if ever you have the opportunity. I think it will appeal to a wide variety of gamers. That is Champions of Midgard from Grey Fox Games. High recommendation.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.